Imagine this. A leader stands before a massive, cheering crowd. His voice cuts through the noise, sharp and direct. He throws out words like daggers, thugs, animals, invaders. Each word hits its mark, stripping away humanity from his enemies. But these aren't just insults. They're signals designed to divide, to ignite anger, to incite hatred. This is not ancient history. It's happening now. Why does this kind of language still work? Why do people, in the heart of modern democracies, rally behind a figure who uses words to fracture society? It's not just politics. It's much deeper. It's inside us. It's in the human mind. Let me show you something. Through the lens of Schema Theapy, we can see exactly how these leaders manipulate not just our thoughts, but our emotions, our deepest fears. They don't stop at the surface. No. They reach into our most vulnerable places. And from there, they trigger fear, ignite anger, and demand loyalty. When we feel threatened, when we're scared, our brains light up, and that's when they strike. This is the hidden playbook of authoritarianism. Let's dive in. The power of dehumanization, a history repeated. Throughout history, certain leaders have understood the dark power of words. Not just any words, words that dehumanize. Think back to Adolf Hitler. He didn't just call his enemies Jews. No, he called them vermin, parasites. Posters in Nazi Germany showed them as rats, infesting society. Joseph Stalin did the same. His enemies? He labeled them poisonous weeds. This wasn't just propaganda. It was a calculated strategy designed to strip away humanity. Once you believe your enemy is no longer human, anything is justified. But why did this work? How could entire nations be led to such brutality? The answer is fear. Fear, that gut-wrenching terror, makes people accept anything. And these leaders knew it. They used dehumanization to frame their enemies as existential threats. This wasn't just politics. It became a matter of survival. And survival justifies anything. But here's the twist. This playbook is still alive. It's in the air today. There's a modern figure using the same tactics. Instead of calling people parasites, he calls them animals. Instead of weeds, he talks about invasions. The language? Carefully chosen. Designed to trigger fear. Designed to control. Why it works. Schema Theapy and human vulnerability. Here's where things get really interesting. Why do people still fall for it? The human brain is a maze of emotions, patterns, and fears. But there's a way to understand it through Schema Theapy. Developed by Dr. Jeffrey Young, Schema Theapy shows us how emotional wounds, often from childhood, shape how we see the world. These wounds are called schemas. They're like deep emotional scars that influence everything we do, and they make us vulnerable. Let's say someone grows up in chaos, betrayed, hurt, made to feel unsafe. This person develops a mistrust abuse schema. As an adult, they see threats everywhere. They don't trust anyone. And then an authoritarian leader steps in. He says, "You're right. The world is dangerous. Look at these animals, these thugs, these invaders." That person's schema explodes. Fear takes over. anger follows. They trust the leader because he mirrors their deepest fear. And suddenly the world feels even more dangerous. They don't question, they don't reason, they react. But this isn't the only way authoritarian leaders exploit human vulnerability. Some people carry a different wound, a social exclusion alienation schema. Maybe they grew up feeling outcast or never quite fit in. And when the leader steps up and says, "You belong with me," we're the righteous ones. The others? They're not like us. They don't deserve to be part of this. Something inside them lights up. Now they're not just a follower. They're part of something bigger. They feel important, seen, and they'll defend that feeling with everything they have. Do you see the pattern? It's not about politics. It's about deep emotional needs. And these leaders know how to exploit them. But we're not done yet. The defectiveness shame schema, a dangerous projection. Some people don't feel fear. They don't feel isolated. They feel something much darker. They feel defective. The defectiveness shame schema is one of the most insidious wounds. It tells people that they're broken, flawed, and worthless. This feeling eats away at a person's soul. And here's where authoritarian leaders offer a dark escape. They don't fix that feeling. They exploit it. They offer someone to blame. It's not you who's defective, the leader says. It's them. The immigrants, the minorities, the political enemies. They're the problem. And in that moment, followers project their own shame onto others. Their anger isn't just justified. It feels righteous. The leader gives them permission to attack, exclude, and dehumanize others. Because in doing so, they escape their own pain. For a while, at least. Coping modes. The dark path of survival. Here's where things take an even darker turn. Schemas lead to coping modes, the ways people react when their emotional wounds are triggered. Authoritarian leaders exploit these modes with precision. One of the most dangerous modes, bully attack. When followers enter this mode, they lash out, aggressively, at anyone they see as a threat. Driven by the mistrust abuse schema, aggression becomes their defense. And with the leader's violent rhetoric, they feel justified. We have to protect ourselves, they think. It's us or them. And when someone feels like it's a battle for survival, the door to violence swings wide open. But that's not the only mode at play. Enter over-controller modes, where people go to extreme lengths to feel in control. They support authoritarian measures, no matter how oppressive, because their vulnerability to harm schema convinces them that it's the only way to feel safe. For those with a social exclusion schema combined with approval seeking, loyalty to the leader becomes their lifeline. They conform, they follow. They'll do anything to stay in the leader's in-group. These schemas and modes, once activated, are rigid survival patterns that some may find almost impossible to break. That's what makes authoritarian manipulation so terrifying. It doesn't just touch the surface, it burrows deep. There's one more schema authoritarian leaders love to exploit, the vulnerability schema. This one convinces people that disaster is always just around the corner, that catastrophe is inevitable. Leaders who prey on this schema paint the world as dangerous, chaotic, and unstable. And they present themselves as the only ones who can keep it from crumbling. Only I can fix it, they proclaim. Followers with this schema, they become consumed by fear. They cling to the leader for safety. Everything the leader says feels like prophecy. And when people feel this vulnerable, they're willing to sacrifice their freedoms, anything to feel safe. The path forward: understanding, resistance, and healing. Here's the truth. Once you understand this manipulation, you can break free. Schema Theapy offers a way to recognize and heal from these emotional wounds. Awareness is your first line of defense. When you know your schemas, when you understand how fear, anger, or shame are driving your behavior, you can regain control. The key is building up your healthy adult mode. This is the part of you that's grounded, rational, and empathetic. When the healthy adult is strong, you can face fear without falling into aggression or blind loyalty. You see, authoritarian manipulation thrives in the shadows. But once you shine a light on it, once you understand how it works, it loses its power. This is just the beginning. By uncovering these psychological patterns, we can break the hold that authoritarianism has over our minds, our communities, and our democracy. And together, we can reclaim our power. Stay tuned for part 2 in our series. The battle for the mind is real, but it's one we can win.